Injury Lawyers, LA 21-12681. Offices in Baton Rouge. Now, The Hunt Palmer Show. You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Looking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. It means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week is off to a good start. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and pumped up that you're hanging out with us here for the next couple of hours. We got College World Series to talk about. They're about to crank up an elimination game up there in Omaha. Derek Carr and Clint Kubiak sound from the end of last week as the Saints wrapped up mandatory mini camp. Les Miles is suing LSU, apparently. Got the U.S. Open to react to. We'll also chat with Billy Embody at the top of hour number 2, as it was a big weekend for official visitors for LSU football. So we'll get to all of that in the second hour. I want to start with the baseball transfer portal. It giveth, then it taketh away. Back at the beginning of the weekend, LSU landed a couple of pitchers in the transfer portal. We'll start there before a departure that just broke about 45 minutes ago. Devin Sheeran, a right-handed pitcher from Mount St. Mary's, committed to LSU, and Luke Hayden, a right-handed pitcher from Indiana State, committed to LSU as well. I'll take them in that order. Devin Sheeran is a really interesting ad for LSU. He's 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", depending on what link you're clicking on. Big physical right-handed pitcher from Mount St. Mary's who had some really impressive strikeout numbers as a freshman. He just wrapped up his freshman season at Mount St. Mary. He threw 70 innings, allowed just 49 hits and 37 earned runs. He struck out 109 in 70 innings of work and walked 32. Now, 32 walks is a little bit high, but for a freshman, that can happen, especially when you're trying to harness that type of stuff. Apparently, Sheeran had a pretty significant growth spurt right there at the end of high school, which is why a 6'5", 245-pound, 97-mile-an-hour throw-in kid ends up at Mount St. Mary's instead of a more high-profile program. But again, as I mentioned, he throws really hard, 98 miles an hour, and he has a good slider. And this is not a guy who's been a reliever. He started games at times for Mount St. Mary's. So just a really big arm to add. And I think the most positive thing about the ad of Devin Sheeran in the transfer portal is that LSU is going to have him for 2 years because he was only a freshman. This is not just a one-year deal, kind of like Luke Holman or Gage Jump. This is a guy who is going to be here for a couple of years. So I think a really, really promising ad for LSU there. Luke Hayden is the other addition, a right-handed pitcher from Indiana State who just finished his junior season there at Indiana State. They had a really good team. Obviously, they were on the verge of potentially hosting a regional. The Sycamores got sent to Lexington, couldn't get out of that regional. But he made 16 starts for Indiana State this past year, threw 78 innings, allowed 73 hits, allowed 40 earned runs. 40 runs, 37 earned runs. He walked 47, which is a really, really high number, but he struck out 91 in those 78 innings, 248 opponent batting average. Fastball, 93 most of the time, up to 96. This is a really promising ad who could potentially be a weekend rotation piece for LSU next year if he makes it to campus. He has completed 3 years of college baseball. He is eligible for the draft. He's not a first-round pick or anything, but you're not going to see mock drafts that go 20 rounds. So I'm not sure what the professional scouts think of him or how much money he'd be willing to take to pass up 1 year of playing at LSU. But if Luke Hayden is not selected to his liking in the MLB draft, he could come to LSU and I think be a potential weekend rotation ad. So LSU is gone pretty hard on transfer pitchers here. They added Zach Cohen, the ace from Wofford, added Chandler Dorsey, the closer from South Florida. Then they added Devin Sheeran as well as Luke Hayden. That is 4 big-time right-handed pitching prospects that they've pulled in, as well as Luis Hernandez, big slugger who played catcher, first base, and a little bit of DH for Indiana State as well. So hard at work in the transfer portal, and that's because they've got to be hard at work in the transfer portal because there are so many exiting via the transfer portal. You know Cam Johnson and Paxton Kling and Sam Dutton and Aiden Moffitt and Javen Coleman and Zeb Ruddle, Austin Rowley. Like, there's a lot of guys that have jumped in the transfer portal leaving LSU, and the latest was not a shocker, but certainly one that I think is impactful, and that's Brady Neil. Brady Neil, about an hour ago, it was reported he was heading into the transfer portal. Neil was a guy that I really coveted for LSU out of the high school class 2 years ago. I thought he was a significant draft risk. He had a left-handed hitter with some power who's got some really good characteristics behind the plate, and he just never really clicked at LSU, some due to poor production, some due to injury. He just didn't play enough. He was the starting catcher as a true freshman right out of the gate on opening day. He is the starting catcher. And then he got hurt. The back injury kind of flared up. He did not play the back half of the season, went to Cape Cod for the summer after his freshman year, played for a week and got hurt there, came back, was on basically a pitch count in the fall, and then he got hurt again in the spring after he was a starting catcher. It just never, he wasn't able to play enough. And like, I don't mean to, negatively talk about college athletes. That's not what we do a lot. But he is in the same class as Paxton Kling and had very similar expectations to Paxton Kling. When Paxton Kling jumped in the transfer portal, I got on the show and I said, look, this is a 190 hitter against elite level competition. He played as a freshman, he played as a sophomore, he played in Cape Cod, and if you put those 3 years together against the SEC and against Cape Cod League pitching, he has not hit at all. And I just did not have a lot of confidence that if Paxton Kling came back to LSU next year, that he was going to have some sort of career renaissance and become a 295 hitter with 16 homers. Like, I just didn't think that was in there for Paxton Kling. I don't feel that way about Brady Neil. I'm still not 100% convinced that Brady Neil can't be a really good SEC catcher. He needed a full summer this year, a full fall this coming fall, and then a lot of at-bats against elite level competition next year, and then I could make a more educated decision on what his ceiling is as a baseball player. But you didn't get that because Brady Neil just was not healthy almost at all at LSU for 2 years. He's very young for his age, skipped a grade, was very young when he got to LSU, and he just hasn't had a chance to fully develop in this program. And I think that's what's very frustrating for Jay Johnson about this entire process. Yes, it is great for LSU that they can go in the transfer portal and get Wofford Zays, and go in the transfer portal and get South Florida's closer, and go in the transfer portal and grab Luis Hernandez to hit 20 home runs for Indiana State, and Luke Hayden and Devin Sheeran. Like, all that's fantastic. It's great that LSU can go get Tommy White and go get Paul Skeens, and that's a big, big positive about having a program and a brand as powerful as LSU is that you can cherry pick from all over the country and supplement your rosters. But Jay Johnson also wants to do this with high school kids that he can develop himself for 3-4 years. And that part is being taken away because guys that aren't playing a significant amount early in their career are leaving, as opposed to learning and growing and having him cultivated in his program. They're bolting. And I think that's really frustrating for him because he prides himself on his ability to develop. And you have to know how much he sweated getting Paxton Kling and Brady Neil and Cam Johnson through the draft to campus so that he could have them for 2 or 3 years, and they're all jumping ship. And that's just part of this era of collegiate sports. It's not right or wrong. It just is. And so I don't know all that went into Brady Neal's decision to transfer, but I can look at LSU's depth chart and look at the catcher position and seeing Alex Milazzo move on and seeing Hayden Travinsky move on, and Brady Neil would be the odds-on favorite to be the starting catcher at LSU next year. Now, you're bringing in, hopefully, if you're LSU, Cade Arambidi, one of the top prep catchers in the country out of Houston. You're bringing in Blaze Priester, who's a really talented catching prospect as well, who is an older player. He's older than Brady Neil, actually. If maybe those guys, he saw the writing on the wall, if those guys would beat him out and he wasn't going to be a catcher. But I don't know what the situation was. I just know that as I'm following this baseball program and kind of looking at what next year's going to look like, Brady Neil was part of that equation for me. And that is obviously not going to be the case as the Florida native has decided he's going to jump into the transfer portal. So you're taking notes at home. That's Devin Sheeran in, Luke Hayden in, Chandler Dorsey in, Luis Hernandez in, Zach Cohen in. And then if you look at the outgoing, it's Cam Johnson, Paxton Kling, Sam Dutton, who announced he's going to Auburn a little bit earlier in the weekend, Aiden Moffitt, Javen Coleman entered today, Zeb Ruddle, Brady Neil, Austin Rowley. Like, there's a lot of guys on the way out, and there's a lot of guys on the way in, and that's part of what Jay has talked about. Like, it's really not program building at this point. You've got to lay a foundation, but you've got to worry about the next team. And then that team turns over, and you got to worry about the next team. I would expect that there's a chance LSU could go and try to find another catcher. In Jay Johnson's first year here, Milazzo got hurt and Travinsky got hurt, and you basically had to send Tyler McManus out there on one leg to do the catching because that's all you had left. And he wasn't really healthy, but that's really all you had. So he made sure that was not going to be the case ever again. And that's when he brought Milazzo back, brought Travinsky back, brought Brady Neil in, brought Jared Jones in, brought Ethan Fry in. Like, they loaded up on catchers, and now all of that may turn over. You've got to find some guys that can catch. You hope that there are two coming in this class, but I think LSU may be on the lookout for one more as the transfer portal continues here. We still got 2 weeks of guys that can go in here. You don't until the beginning of July you can enter the transfer portal, so it's not even a complete list of everybody you could pursue at this point. And I'm sure Jay Johnson will be very, very actively working on that. So the news of today: Brady Neil into the transfer portal. He will look elsewhere for the remainder of his collegiate career. They are underway up there in Omaha, Nebraska. Jack Caglione is digging in for Florida. It is NC State and Florida in an elimination game from Charles Schwab Field. Our baseball breakdowns all season long, brought to you by Pluckers. 2 locations, Nicholson just south of campus and Bluebonnet right in front of the Mall of Louisiana. Get on by today. Get your cold beer. Get you some delicious award-winning jumbo chicken wings. Try your sauce. I'm a fan of the Breggie's Creole Crust, new this spring, and it is awesome, awesome stuff. If you have not tried it, get on by either Pluckers location to check it out today. All right, moving right along here on a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. When we come back, I've got some thoughts on the College World Series as this has gone, and it has been absolutely gut-wrenching for me to watch over the last 3 days. We'll give that a talk coming up next.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show.
Every shot, every goal, ESPN Bet has fans covered for the biggest moments on the road to a championship. The exclusive sportsbook of ESPN is the only place to find special offers and promotions from your favorite ESPN shows and personalities throughout the playoffs. New users can get a bet reset up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Download ESPN Bet today. What a play. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with the Bears Lake Charles. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Get the 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge app powered by Bayou Ford and tap the microphone icon to send us your thoughts in an audio message. Your message could be played on air during Off the Bench with Esther and T-Bob, the Hunt Palmer Show, and after further review with Matt Moscone.
The best-kept secret in town is out. Discover Tallulah at the Renaissance Hotel on Bluebonnet.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100